The chains of silence. Each hall was cold, stone walls stretched high, and the air carried a sharp smell of metal and fire. Torches burned in the corners, their flames flickering in the stale darkness. At the center of the hall was a cage. Inside, on the rough floor, sat a girl. She was not human. Her skin held a faint shimmer, a soft glow under the firelight. Her eyes, wide and quiet, reflected years of pain. She did not speak. She had not spoken in a long time. A heavy collar wrapped around her neck, connected to thick iron chains. The chains rattled each time she moved even a little. For the masters, she was not a person. She was a pet, something to display, something to control. The alien lords who ruled this palace liked their power to be seen. To them, breaking someone's spirit was more valuable than any treasure, and a girl small, fragile, yet strangely radiant was their trophy. She had once walked free. Now, her every step was measured by chains. Every day was the same. Guards marched past her cage. Sometimes they threw scraps of food onto the floor. Like feeding an animal, she bent down, eating in silence, her pride buried beneath the weight of survival. If she dared to look up, the guards mocked her. If she dared to resist, the chains burned with hidden energy, sending waves of pain through her body. But even in silence, her heart was alive. Deep inside, she carried memories she could not erase. The sound of wind over free skies, the touch of warm rain on her face, the laughter of her people, long before the invasion. These memories burned brighter than the torches around her. They were all she had. One night, when the palace was quieter than usual, she shifted closer to the bars. Through the cracks, she could see the vast hall. The lords were not there, only a few guards, tired and restless, muttered in their strange tongue. She curled her knees to her chest and stared at the ceiling. Stars were painted there, glowing faintly in the dark. It was a cruel decoration, a sky she could not reach. The silence of the cage was heavy. It pressed against her ears, reminding her that no voice would answer if she spoke. She wondered, sometimes, if she still remembered her own voice. She had been called many things by the masters: pet, creature, toy, but her real name was hidden deep inside her heart, untouched by them. To speak it aloud would mean hope, and hope was dangerous. Her chains clinked softly as she moved. The sound echoed in the hall like a reminder of her prison. She closed her eyes, imagining the world outside. Was there anyone left who remembered her? Was there anyone brave enough to break these walls? A shadow passed by. She quickly lowered her gaze, as trained. Looking at a guard without permission was forbidden. The guard chuckled and tapped the bars of her cage with his weapon. She did not flinch. She had learned that showing fear gave them joy. Instead, she sat still, her glowing eyes fixed on the ground. The guard walked away, leaving her again in the silence. Yet inside her chest, her heart whispered, not forever. She did not know why she felt it that night, but something inside her told her the silence would not last. The chains that held her would one day break, but for now, she waited. She breathed quietly. She held on to the fragments of memory that reminded her she was more than a pet. The night dragged on. The torches dimmed, and the hall grew darker. In that silence, the alien girl curled into herself and closed her eyes. For others, it was only another night of slavery. For her, it was another night of survival. And far away, unseen by her, a new path was already opening. Somewhere in the shadows of the palace, a human had just arrived. A stranger who did not belong to this cruel world. A stranger who would soon step into the hall where the girl sat in chains. The chains rattled once more as she shifted on the cold floor. Her fate was still locked, her silence unbroken, but destiny had already begun to move. The human Erevolth morning began like every other. The alien lords gathered in their golden seats above the hall. The guards lined the walls, their armor shining with cruel pride. The alien girl stayed inside her cage, chains heavy against her neck. Her eyes stayed low, her voice silent, her soul waiting. She expected nothing new, but then the great doors opened. The sound of metal hinges filled the hall as the doors creaked. Wide, a figure stepped inside, different from the guards, different from the lords. He walked carefully, his steps light, his eyes sharp. His clothes were rough, not royal, not proud. His hair was dark, his skin pale against the firelight. He was human. The girl's breath caught. For years, she had seen no human in this hall. Humans were rare here, often slaves, sometimes dead. Yet this one walked with an unusual calm. He carried no chains, no whip. His hands were empty, yet steady. The lords watched him with interest. They whispered in their strange language, eyes filled with amusement. A new servant had arrived, another toy for their palace. To them, he was nothing. To the girl, he was something else. For a moment, her glowing eyes lifted, just slightly, just enough to see his face. Their gazes met. It was quick like lightning flashing through a storm, but it was real. The man did not look at her like a guard would. He did not see her as a pet. His eyes held a quiet fire, the kind of fire she remembered from her own people. In that instant, she felt a small spark inside her chest, something she had buried long ago, hope. The guards ordered him to bow. He did, but as he lowered his head, his eyes flicked toward her cage again. The look was brief, hidden, yet powerful. She understood it without words. I see you. The day moved on. The lords gave commands, and the human obeyed. He carried trays of food, fetched water, and cleaned the floor. His hands moved with practice, but his eyes moved differently. He scanned the hall, the guards, the chains, the doors. He was watching, studying, learning. The girl noticed every detail, every glance, every pause. She saw it. She had spent years in silence, but silence taught her to listen, to observe. And she knew this man was not like the others. He was hiding something. Later that evening, when the hall grew quieter, the human passed near her cage. He pretended to place a tray by the guard's chair, but his eyes shifted toward her once again. For the first time in years, her heart pounded fast. Eat, a guard barked, tossing scraps into her cage. She lowered her head, picking up the food slowly, just as they expected. But while she moved, her eyes met the human's again. This time, there was no mistake. His lips moved just slightly, almost invisible. A single word, whispered without sound. But she read it. She had learned long ago to read lips. Even through the bars of her cage, the word was, wait. Her hands froze. Her food lay untouched. The chains rattled as she shifted, her heart racing. Wait, for what? For escape, for death. The human turned quickly and walked away, pretending nothing had happened. The guards laughed, too busy with their drinks to notice. The girl sat still, the word echoing in her mind. For the first time in years, she felt the silence break not outside, but inside her. Her heart was no longer quiet. It beat with a rhythm she thought she had lost. That night, when the torches dimmed and the guards grew lazy, she sat awake. She listened for steps in the shadows, for whispers in the dark. The chains pressed heavy on her skin, but her spirit felt lighter. She did not know his name. She did not know his plan. She did not know if she could trust him, but she knew this. The day the human arrived, her fate shifted, and somewhere deep inside, in a place even the chains could not touch, she dared to believe. Fire in Chain's palace was louder that day. The alien lords feasted in their high seats, their laughter echoing across the hall. Goblets clinked, plates filled with strange glowing food, and music from alien instruments filled the air. But for Lyra, the sound was only a curtain hiding danger. Her chains felt tighter, heavier, as if the collar itself sensed her heart was no longer broken. She tried to lower her gaze, to stay small, to be invisible, but the lords were not blind. They had ruled for centuries by crushing hope before it grew. Bring the pet forward. One lord commanded, his voice sharp. A guard yanked the chains, dragging Lyra out of her cage. She stumbled, her knees scraping against the cold floor. The hall fell silent. Every eye turned toward her. Daniel froze where he stood with a tray of wine. He forced himself not to move, not to run to her. His fingers tightened around the tray until his knuckles turned white. He knew something was about to happen. The alien lord leaned forward, his eyes narrow. This one looks different. Not so empty, not so quiet. Perhaps she remembered she once had a will. The hall filled with cruel laughter. Lyra kept her eyes on the floor, her chest tight with fear. Test her, another lord said. Let us see if her spirit still bends. A guard pressed a control device on his wrist. The chains glowed with a sickening light. Energy surged through them, crawling up her collar, burning into her skin. Lyra gasped, her body shaking. The pain was sharp, like fire tearing through her veins. She collapsed onto the floor. Her hands clawing at the stone as the chains burned. The lords laughed louder, their voices cold and cruel. Daniel's heart pounded. He wanted to throw the tray down, to fight them, to stop the torture. But he forced himself to stay still. If he revealed himself now, their plan would die before It began. His jaw clenched, his eyes locked on Lyra, silently begging her to endure. The energy pulsed again, stronger. Lyra cried out, her voice echoing across the hall. It was the first true sound she had made in front of the lords in years. The guard smirked, pleased with her suffering. Enough. The first lord said at last, waving a hand. She remembers her place. The energy stopped. Lyra lay trembling on the floor, her skin glowing faintly where the chains had burned her. The guard dragged her back to the cage and threw her inside like broken glass. Daniel bit his lip until it bled, his rage barely hidden. He placed the tray on the table and bowed low, hiding the fire in his eyes. That night, when the hall grew empty, Daniel rushed to her cage, his hands pressed against the bars, his voice shaking. Lyra, speak to me. She lifted her head slowly. Her face was pale, her body weak, but her eyes still glowed. They tried to break me, she whispered, but I'm not broken. Daniel's chest tightened with pride and fear all at once. You are stronger than they know, he said. His voice was low, urgent. But we must move soon. They are watching you now. One mistake, and they will kill us both. Lyra's hand trembled as she reached for the bars. Daniel gripped it gently, careful not to hurt her burned skin. They think pain can silence me, she whispered. But tonight, I remembered something. When the chains burned, I saw my people again. I saw their faces. I heard their voices. They told me not to give up. Daniel nodded, his voice steady. And you won't. We'll find the crystal. We'll break the chains. We'll end this. Lyra closed her eyes, her breathing slow. Promise me, Daniel. Promise me that if I fall, you will not stop. Daniel shook his head firmly. No, we rise together, or not at all. For the first time, a faint smile touched Lyra's lips, weak, trembling, but real. Outside the cage, the torches flickered. Somewhere in the shadows, a guard shifted, watching. More closely than before, the palace was growing suspicious. The danger was closer than ever, but inside the cage, where fire and chains had tried to destroy her, Lyra's spirit burned brighter than before. The forbidden plan was no longer just hope. It was survival, and soon, it would be war. The escape. Spark Palace never truly slept. Even in the dead of night, guards patrolled the halls, their weapons glowing with alien fire. Strange machines hummed in the distance, and the walls themselves seemed alive with hidden energy. Yet this night felt different. The air was heavier, tense, as if the palace itself knew something was about to happen. Inside her cage, Lyra sat, awake. Her burns still ached from the punishment, but her eyes remained sharp. She was waiting. Every sound, every shadow made her heart pound. Somewhere beyond the hall, Daniel was moving. He had whispered his plan to her the night before. Tomorrow, when the Lord's feast, I'll slip into the vault passage. I need to find the crystal. Without it, you will never be free. Lyra had wanted to stop him, to beg him not to risk it. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw the fire she thought had died in her people. She had only said one word, go. Now, hours later, the moment had come. The lords drank deep, their laughter echoing across the great chamber. Guards shifted, uneasily, half distracted by the feast. Daniel moved quietly among them, carrying trays of wine, bowing low. To anyone else, he was just a servant. But every step brought him closer to the far end of the hall, the place where the massive stone doors guarded the vault. Lyra's heart raced as she watched him. From her cage, she could see only glimpses, but she knew what he was doing. His hand brushed the edge of the door as he placed a goblet down nearby. His eyes flicked to the strange symbols carved deep into the stone dot. Suddenly, one of the guards frowned. His eyes narrowed at Daniel. Human, the guard barked. What are you doing there? Daniel froze, bowing his head. Forgive me, master. I spilled a drop of wine. He bent quickly, pretending to wipe the floor. The guard's gaze lingered for a moment too long. Lyra held her breath, fear choking her. If the guard looked closer, if he saw the truth in Daniel's eyes, everything would end. But then the Lord shouted for more drink, and the guard turned away. Daniel rose slowly, his face calm, though his pulse thundered inside him. He stepped back into the shadows, his eyes finding Lyra's for the briefest second. She knew what it meant. I'm inside. Hours passed. The feast ended. The Lord staggered away to their chambers, and the guards returned to their posts. The hall grew quiet, the torches dim. Lyra waited, her chains heavy, her eyes fixed on the vault. At last, a shadow slipped through the dark. Daniel. His clothes were damp with sweat, his breath quick, but his hands trembled with something else victory. He knelt by her cage, opening his palm. There, glowing faintly in the firelight, was a crystal, small, jagged, but alive with power. Lyra's breath caught. Her collar hummed the moment the crystal neared, the chains vibrating as if they recognized their master. "You found it," she whispered. Daniel nodded. His voice was low, urgent. "It wasn't easy. The vault was guarded by machines, traps, but I remembered your words, the symbols. Without you, I couldn't have taken it." Tears filled her eyes for the first time. In years, the hope of freedom was not a dream. It was real, glowing in his hand. But the moment was fragile. A noise echoed from the hall, footsteps, sharper than before. A guard was coming. "Hide it," Lyra hissed. Daniel closed his fist around the crystal and slipped it beneath his shirt just as a guard approached. "What are you doing here, human?" The guard growled. His eyes scanned Daniel, suspicion heavy. Daniel bowed low, forcing his voice steady. "The Lord's ordered me to watch the pet, to make sure she does not die from the punishment." The guard sneered. "As if it matters if she dies." He tapped the bars with his weapon, making Lyra flinch. "Still breathing, pet. Good. The Lords will want you alive for tomorrow." With a cruel laugh, the guard turned and walked away. Daniel exhaled slowly, his body shaking with the tension of almost being caught. Lyra pressed her forehead against the bars, whispering urgently, "They know something is wrong. We cannot wait much longer. Tomorrow, they will test me again. If we do not move soon, it will be too late." Daniel's eyes burned with resolve. "Then tomorrow night, we escape. With this crystal, the chains can be broken." Lyra's hands tightened around the bars. Her heart raced with fear and fire. "Tomorrow night," she whispered. The chains rattled softly as if warning her of the danger. The palace still breathed around them, its shadows deep and watching. But for the first time, the spark of escape burned bright. The forbidden plan was no longer whispers. It was alive, waiting for its moment to strike. The breaking of Chain's palace was quiet, but it was the silence before a storm. Torches flickered low, casting long shadows on the walls. Guards walked the halls, their steps heavy, their eyes sharper than ever. The Lords had grown suspicious. They had seen change in their pet. Tonight, they planned another test. But Daniel and Lyra could not wait any longer. The crystal was hidden under his shirt, its faint glow pressing against his heart. Lyra's collar hummed each time it came near, like chains whispering their own fear. "Tonight," Daniel whispered through the bars of her cage, "no more waiting. We do this now." Lyra's hands trembled as she reached for him. Her voice was steady, though her heart thundered. "If we fail, they will kill us." Daniel's eyes burned. "If we do nothing, we are already dead." The choice was no longer a choice. It was survival. When the guards grew lazy at the far end of the hall, Daniel pulled the crystal from his shirt. Its light filled the cage with a soft blue glow. The chains vibrated, reacting to their master's shard. Lyra felt the power crawl across her skin, like a forgotten memory returning. "Hold still," Daniel whispered. He pressed the crystal against the collar. A sharp crack echoed as the metal lit up with blinding light. Energy burned, sparks flying. Lyra gasped as the collar tightened once more, fighting to stay closed. But then, with a sudden burst, the lock shattered. The collar fell to the ground with a heavy clang. The chains went slack. Lyra stumbled forward, her hands free for the first time in years. She pressed them against her chest, tears filling her glowing eyes. "I can breathe," she whispered, her voice trembling with awe. Daniel caught her hand, pulling her up. "We have to move now." But the sound of breaking chains was not silent. The guards heard. Shouts filled the hall as armored soldiers stormed forward, weapons glowing. "The pet is loose," one bellowed. "Kill them both." Daniel grabbed a fallen spear from the floor, holding it awkwardly but firmly. Lyra stood beside him, the glow of her freed skin brighter than the torches. For years she had been silent, broken. Now she raised her voice. "No more chains," she cried, the sound echoing through the hall like thunder. The guards charged. Daniel fought with desperate strength, blocking strikes, pushing enemies back. He was no trained soldier, but rage and hope made him fierce. Beside him, Lyra raised her hands. The crystal pulsed in her palm. Energy burst from her like lightning, striking the guards, sending them crashing into the walls. For the first time since her capture, her true power awakened. The Lord stormed into the hall, their faces twisted with rage. "Fools," one roared. "You cannot escape us." Lyra's chest heaved as she turned to face them. The fire in her eyes was no longer hidden. "You enslaved my people. You silenced my voice. But tonight, I rise again." The lords raised their weapons, glowing with deadly power. Daniel stepped in front of her, ready to shield her with his own life. But Lyra touched his arm gently, her voice soft. "Not this time. I will protect you." She lifted the crystal high. The chains that once held her now shattered completely. Breaking apart with a sound like thunder, light exploded through the hall, tearing into the lords, ripping their weapons from their hands. The palace trembled. Walls cracked. The painted stars above shattered, revealing the night sky through broken stone. Daniel grabbed Lyra's hand. Together they ran through the chaos past fallen guards, through collapsing doors, into the open air. For the first time in years, Lyra felt wind on her face. The real sky stretched above her, endless and free. She stopped, her chest rising, her heart burning with joy. "I am free," she whispered. Daniel looked at her, his face tired but alive. "No," he said softly, shaking his head. "We are free." Behind them, the palace burned with fire and screams. Ahead of them, the night stretched wide, filled with stars that no master could cage. Lyra raised her eyes to the heavens, her chains broken forever. A girl once enslaved as a pet now walked free beside a human who had dared to see her spirit. The silence that once ruled her life was gone. In its place was the sound of freedom, louder than fire, brighter than chains, stronger than fear. And together, step by step, they disappeared into the night.